Ladies and gentlemen, wishing you a peaceful night full of rest and relaxation. Tonight we stroll barefoot down the gold-laced walkways of forgotten African kingdoms, where palace walls shimmer in the moonlight and sandalwood smoke curls through air thick with cinnamon and song. You run your fingers across ancient brickwork, warm from the day's sun, each stone humming with centuries of forgotten wealth and quiet pride. The breeze smells like mango leaves and melted beeswax, and just beyond the gate, someone carries a ledger inked in indigo, counting fortunes once traded for cowrie shells and copper. You probably won't survive this world, not because of any swords or spears, but because no modern wallet can handle a gold economy where even the horses had braided golden manes. In this world, gold wasn't luxury. It was language, tax code, and the original flex. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, comment your location and what time it is where you're listening from. I always love to see where these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand just beyond the walls of Niani, a capital that now slumbers under Malian dust, but once sparkled with prosperity. The stars above you don't twinkle. They glint, as if echoing the wealth that once flooded this land. The year is somewhere in the 14th century. You're beneath the rule of Mansa Musa, the man who once gave away so much gold that an entire foreign economy hiccuped for years. This is a kingdom where the economy isn't backed by gold, it is gold. Gold lines the cuffs of robes, glimmers in ink pots, weighs down saddlebags, and glows in the braids of noble women's hair. Historians still argue whether Mansa Musa was the wealthiest individual in human history. Was he richer than Augustus Caesar? Was he richer than Jeff Bezos in disguise? The records are foggy, but the legends are luminous. You pass a caravan of donkeys bearing silken umbrellas and ebony chests, escorted by guards in lion-skin boots. Each one carries a seal stamped with a local proverb. Wealth that sleeps is just metal. The marketplaces of Niani smell of cardamom and fresh goat cheese. Merchants from across the known world, Tuaregs, Berbers, Songhai traders, gather here to exchange not only gold, but ideas, mathematics, and sometimes mildly suspicious elixirs claimed to cure both insomnia and heartbreak. One merchant's stand features gold scales, yes, but also peacock feathers and dried scorpions. You decide not to ask. Children play in courtyards paved with crushed quartz, chasing one another with carved giraffe dolls. Their laughter echoes between buildings constructed from sun-baked mud and glittering with flecks of embedded mica. Everything shines just a little. Mansa Musa himself. You don't meet him yet. He's on pilgrimage, and when he travels, it's not subtle. On his famous Hajj to Mecca, he reportedly brought 60,000 people, hundreds of camels, and handed out so much gold in Cairo that the value of the metal deflated dramatically. Gold, it turns out, doesn't like to be overshared. Historians debate just how bad the inflation was, but it was bad enough that chroniclers made sure we'd still be laughing about it 700 years later. And yes, there's even a cheeky rumor that one camel carried nothing but spices, poetry scrolls, and a chef named Fatu who insisted on cooking with water imported from Mali. Fatu had standards. As you wind deeper into the city, you begin to notice how measured everything is. This is not chaos. The streets, though lively, are organized. The marketplace has quiet zones for scholars and louder spaces for drumming. The mosque's call to prayer folds into the rhythm of commerce like a lullaby within a symphony. A scholarly debate still bubbles quietly. Was Mali's golden age truly centralized? Or was it a confederation of smaller powerhouses, each flowing their glitter into the larger stream? The court records are partial, and oral histories, while vivid, aren't so keen on precise dates. What's clear, though, is that this place pulsed with purpose. By nightfall, lamps light the walls of study rooms where scribes dip reed pens into ink made of charcoal and crushed berries. They transcribe everything: trade manifests, genealogies, even bedtime stories. And, of course, the occasional scathing political satire disguised as animal fables. Yes, even golden empires have grumpy writers. A gentle wind brushes past your shoulder as you sit beneath a baobab tree near the outskirts of the city. You watch as merchants settle into blankets and sip date wine, whispering news from Timbuktu and rumors from the coast. Someone nearby hums an old praise song, and a little girl counts gold nuggets under her breath like lullabies. You lose count after 37, and just as your eyes grow heavy, you hear it. The soft thud of camel hooves at the gate, bearing more gifts, more stories, more weight in glittering dust. You wake to the slow crunch of sand under calloused feet and the muted jingle of metal charms stitched to leather belts. The sun has just begun to rise over the Sahel, casting long golden shadows across an unpaved road so well worn it might as well be a memory itself. You follow it eastward, away from Niani and deeper into the quiet arteries of ancient commerce, where trade didn't just happen, it flowed like breath. These were the superhighways of the Sahel, vast, ancient trade routes that sprawled across West Africa, long before the first cobblestones were laid in Europe's marketplaces. You're walking the skeletal remains of what connected villages to empires, empires to oceans, and gold fields to every hungry hand in between. Contrary to popular maps drawn centuries later, Africa was never isolated. You pass a caravan already packed by dawn, camels snorting softly as they're loaded with salt slabs the size of tombstones, bundles of dyed cotton, and pouches of ground kola nut. Somewhere inside a saddlebag is a bundle of letters, perhaps one destined for Cairo, another for a cousin in Kano, and maybe, just maybe, one containing a coded love poem disguised as trade documentation. The Ghana Empire, sometimes called Wagadu, was one of the earliest powers to truly tame these roots, not by iron fists, but by toll booths. You chuckle to yourself. Nothing says stability like taxes. And Ghana knew exactly where to collect. Sitting strategically between the Sahara's salt mines and the gold fields of Bambouk and Buri, it grew rich not just from mining, but from mediating. Gold came in, salt went out. Ghana took its cut every time, and the kingdom sparkled. A mainstream historical fact worth savoring slowly. Ghana's rulers never actually owned the gold mines themselves. Instead, they controlled who could access them and, crucially, monopolized the gold nuggets. Dust? Fair game. Nuggets? Royal property. You imagine walking into a mall today where you can spend all the coins you want but aren't allowed to touch any paper bills. Frustrating, but genius. The roads were rough, blisteringly hot by day, and chill-bitten by night. There were no hotels, just caravanserais spaced out like constellations. Basic shelters built to shade the weary. and keep your camel from wandering off in search of better wages. You pass a merchant from the distant Niger Bend, singing to herself while arranging her goods. Millet flour, painted calabashes, and a pet chameleon who may or may not be named Timbuktu. She offers you a roasted locust. It's crunchy, slightly lemony, and you don't hate it. Welcome to the protein-rich diet of the mobile elite. Historians still argue whether these roads were formally maintained by empires or informally safeguarded by the very traders who relied on them. Were there royal patrols, trusted mercenary guides, or did the routes remain safe thanks to a dense network of mutual reliance and whispered reputation? What we know for sure is that goods, gold, ideas, and even dance styles moved with astonishing efficiency. You pause at a crossroads where two lines of footprints overlap. One broad and deep from a heavily laden camel, the other light and narrow, perhaps a barefoot child racing ahead with news. A griot once said, "The road speaks, if you learn how to listen." And tonight it murmurs tales of everything from Arabian perfumes to Byzantine beads, all passing silently under the stars. The deeper you go into the Sahel, the more the trade itself begins to resemble a kind of ritual. Every stop, every exchange is conducted with rhythmic formality. Handshakes, bows, the soft clinking of weights on brass scales. A small pouch of gold dust might buy you a linen tunic. Two? Perhaps a carved flute or a woven bed mat that smells faintly of lemongrass. And then there are the fringe details, whispers of travelers who claim to ride ostriches instead of camels. The story goes that a rogue trader once tried to cross the desert on a team of tamed ostriches and almost made it, until one got distracted by its reflection in a polished bronze plate. Historians roll their eyes, but you can't help hoping it's true. As the day wears on, you reach a shaded resting place beneath an acacia tree. A pile of smooth, rounded stones has been deliberately arranged nearby. A signal. Merchants have used stone markers like these for centuries, a kind of analog billboard. Messages left in coded arrangements to signal danger ahead, good deals, or simply to mark where water once flowed. Someone hands you a cool gourd of tamarind juice and a chunk of pressed date cake. The meal is humble, but perfect. The sun filters through the sparse canopy above like golden netting, and a soft wind carries with it the scent of dry earth and spiced oils. A lull descends on the camp. Even the camels stop complaining for once. You lie back and stare up at the sky, tracing trade routes not just on land, but in the clouds. Somewhere, far to the north, a boat in the Mediterranean awaits goods from this network. Somewhere to the south, a farmer plants millet bought with coin minted far away. It's all connected. It always was. You drift a little now, the hum of insects rising in your ears. In the sleepy corner of the Sahel, even the silence feels ancient. By the time your eyes open again, the sky is a velvet dome spangled with stars. The heat of the day has retreated, leaving behind a sharp, dry coolness that clings to your skin like fine dust. You stand and stretch, bones quietly complaining, and fall into step beside a slow-moving caravan headed northeast, toward salt mines, oases, and more importantly, stories wrapped in silk and tucked under camel saddles. This, after all, is how you get rich in the desert, not by running, but by gliding from one starlit waypoint to the next, guided by memory and the sky. The camels know the way, the traders know the rhythm. And you're just lucky to be here. The night navigation system of ancient West African merchants was an art in itself. Before GPS, before compasses were common in these regions, traders moved by star and scent. They memorized the location of specific dunes and tree clusters, some of which had been used as landmarks for generations. The smell of nearby shrubs could tell you how close you were to the next oasis. A shift in the taste of wind might mean salt flats ahead, or a camel who's eaten something it shouldn't have. Your guide for this leg of the journey is a wiry Tuareg elder with eyes like smoked quartz. He hums constantly. A song about the moon's moods, he says, and claims that once, long ago, he found a Roman coin inside a sandstorm. Historians still argue whether Romans ever reached this deep into Africa, but you're not here to debate. You're here to walk beside someone whose knowledge of sand makes Google Maps look like a coloring book. And here's a mainstream fact to lull you along. Caravans crossing the Sahara sometimes included up to 1,000 camels. Think about that. 1,000 camels, each one a living, grumpy gold barge, plodding across the sands for months, even years. And it wasn't just salt and gold they carried. Think ostrich feathers, indigo dye, glass beads, copper ingots, bundles of manuscripts, and jars of honey from bees who never saw snow. You pause beside one such camel who is currently chewing what appears to be half a sandal. He stares at you, unimpressed. Camels, you learn quickly, have no respect for your sense of wonder. By sunrise, you've reached the edges of a vast salt flat, so white, it almost glows. Welcome to Taghaza. It's less a town and more a monument to endurance. Salt slabs are stacked like houses, and they function as both currency and construction material. Traders carve blocks with curved chisels and haul them onto camels with the help of rough-hewn pulleys. Salt here is worth its weight in, well, not gold, but close. A young boy offers you a chunk of the purest salt you've ever seen. You lick it cautiously. It's sharp, clean, a little earthy. Someone nearby laughs and says you've just licked a 1,000-year-old paycheck. You nod approvingly. Not your first weird snack of the week. Historians still debate the exact scale of salt's value relative to gold. Some say it was traded ounce for ounce in specific regions. Others argue the comparison is a bit too romantic. But one thing's clear. Gold and salt danced in economic harmony, and their steps were choreographed by people who knew that wealth wasn't just stored in treasure chests. It was hauled across deserts in the night. As you travel onward, your caravan skirts the edge of the Tanasruft, the land of thirst, one of the harshest stretches of desert on the continent. Here, your footsteps sink deeper. The air feels thinner. The silence thickens until you can hear your own heartbeat echo in your ears. And then, on the horizon, an oasis. Oases weren't just pit stops. They were social hubs, economic way stations, and centers of culture. You arrive at one called Arauan, just as the sun tips past noon. Children rush to greet the caravan. Merchants call out prices for fresh dates, and goats meander between shade tents like they own the place, which they might. The oasis smells of mint, sweat, and date syrup. You sit with a merchant from Timbuktu who shows you a tiny gold figurine shaped like a crocodile. He says it was made by a craftsman near the Niger River and traded all the way up here for salt, cloth, and a promise. You ask what the promise was, but he just smiles and sips his tea. And now, a curious little tidbit. Some desert traders are rumored to have used trained desert cats, sleek, sand-colored feline companions, to sniff out hidden water sources. Most historians raise eyebrows at this idea. Others suggest the cats were simply adorable mascots, or perhaps spiritual guides. Either way, you keep your eyes peeled for any paw prints. The stars come out again. The caravan moves. You continue walking. Your boots are caked in red dust now, and your shoulders ache. But there's something deeply soothing about this movement. This ancient rhythm of gold and salt, of camels and stars. You begin to hum, just like the Tuareg elder did, a song with no words, only distance. Somewhere ahead lies a city of stone and scribes. But tonight, you sleep beneath the constellations, surrounded by salt slabs. The distant groan of camels and the soft flicker of an oil lamp, someone lit just for you. You wake to the smell of roasted millet and camel dung smoke. An oddly comforting combination if you let your nose relax into it. The camp is already stirring, traders shaking sand from their blankets, repacking saddlebags, and muttering about which camels are behaving and which seem to have entered a petty rebellion. Yours is chewing on its tether. Again. You rise, brush off your tunic, and continue walking with the caravan as it winds its way south, following the great artery of the Niger River toward the empire that once ruled them all, Ghana. No, not the modern-day country, though it bears the name with pride, but the ancient Ghana Empire, sometimes called Ouagadougou, which once gleamed so brightly across West Africa that Arab geographers spoke of it in hushed awe. You're heading into the heartland now, where rivers curve like golden bangles across a map, and the soil, if you dig deep enough, bleeds treasure. By the 9th century, the Ghana Empire had already carved itself a reputation as the gatekeeper of gold. Travelers from North Africa, even as far away as Baghdad, wrote of a city where the king sat behind veils of silk, guarded by dogs wearing gold collars and draped in purple cloaks. The part about the dogs? That appears in multiple sources, so either it's a persistent exaggeration, or someone in Ouagadougou really had a thing for accessorized hounds. Historians still argue whether the capital of Ghana was Kumbisala, or a twin-city complex straddling the trade zones and royal quarters. Some records mention two towns facing each other across a strip of empty land, one filled with Muslim merchants and mosques, the other a royal town of indigenous shrines, markets, and mud brick mansions that smelled of incense and cattle. You enter this imagined city now, one foot in dust, one in legend. The sun gleams off gold weights shaped like tiny birds and turtles, used by traders to measure the shimmering dust with meticulous precision. Nothing is wasted. Even the residue on fingertips is flicked into tiny jars and saved for later. You pass rows of market stalls where Tuareg leatherwork hangs beside Moroccan glassware, and children sell bundles of herbs said to cure everything from toothache to heartbreak. A young boy with mischievous eyes offers you a laughing root for just a pinch of gold dust. You decline. Barely. The royal treasury is a fortress of wealth, buried in a palace that sits like a sleeping elephant at the city's core. The King of Ghana, known as the Ghana confusingly enough, held absolute control over the gold nugget trade. Only he could possess raw nuggets. Everyone else dealt in dust. It's like trying to buy a house today using only pennies, while the king lounges on stacks of $100 bills. Regal? Yes. Practical? That's another story. The guards wear elaborately dyed cotton robes, their spears tipped not with steel, but with polished ivory. They nod solemnly as you pass, and you can't help but wonder if they're secretly judging your posture. You straighten up, just in case. In a cool hall lined with carved wooden beams, you hear the echo of court proceedings. Disputes are resolved with calm words, but justice is absolute. In one case, a trader accused of falsifying the weight of his gold is forced to listen as the court poet shames him in verse for an entire hour. Not jail, just really effective embarrassment. A punishment more elegant than brutal. And here's a fringe fact to nibble on like dried mango. Some sources claim the king would sprinkle gold dust along the path to the palace when foreign dignitaries visited, just to demonstrate that even his sidewalks were richer than your wildest dreams. Whether true or not, the image sticks. Golden footpaths leading to a throne under sun-baked skies. You sit beneath an acacia tree and sip from a gourd of sweet tamarind drink. In the distance, a caravan arrives with ivory, incense, and yes, more gold. The trade here isn't just economic, it's theatrical. Every arrival is a parade, every market day, a ceremony. And still, the scholarly arguments continue. Was Ghana's strength in its centralized monarchy? Or was it more a coalition of autonomous regions, stitched together by trade, custom, and carefully negotiated fear of the king's judgment? The truth likely lies somewhere in between, as it often does in empires that lasted centuries. As the sun sinks, you climb a low hill overlooking the city. From here, the rooftops ripple like fabric, and the air smells of dust, smoke, and roasted peanuts. The soundscape is a mix of drumbeats, market chatter, and the distant chanting of a griot reciting lineage histories that stretch back to before the empire even knew its own name. Gold may have made this place wealthy, but it was memory, ritual, and rhythm that made it last. The stars appear again, gently, one by one, like an old friend taking their time to settle beside you. You lie back in the red earth, fingers trailing through grains of sand, wondering how much gold lies beneath you. Forgotten, sleeping, waiting. You wake not to the sound of drums or chanting, but to an eerie quiet, eerier still, because you're standing in the middle of a bustling market. Or rather, a market where no one is speaking. Mouths move, hands gesture, transactions happen, but not a single voice rises above a whisper. It's like entering a dream where language has turned to mist. Welcome to the silent trade. This wasn't just an odd habit. It was a fully developed commercial system used across parts of West Africa, especially along the fringes between kingdoms like Ghana and their less integrated trading partners. Here, transactions occurred without a single word exchanged, and somehow, everyone still got what they wanted. The scene unfolds with theatrical stillness. You watch as a merchant from the Sahel sets down a pile of salt blocks beside a shaded clearing. No one is watching, but also everyone is. Then, without a word, he turns and walks away. From the opposite side of the clearing, a group of forest traders steps forward. They inspect the salt, nod politely to no one in particular, and in its place, they leave a small pile of gold dust. Then they, too, step back into the tree line. Now comes the tension. Will the salt merchant return and find the gold acceptable? If yes, he takes it, and the trade is done. If not, he walks away again, signaling that more gold is expected. This goes on until both sides are satisfied, or bored enough to call it a day. Historians still argue whether silent barter was used only when language barriers made verbal haggling impossible, or if it also served a spiritual or political function, perhaps to prevent disputes, or to lend an air of ritualistic gravity to every transaction. There's something strangely elegant about it. a commerce of mutual trust, absence, and heavily implied side eyes. You crouch at the edge of the trading zone, watching one such session unfold in real time. A child nearby nudges you and drops a smooth stone in your palm. It's a token, proof that you witnessed the trade and kept silent. You smile and nod. She nods back, solemn as a priestess. Even today, some communities whisper stories of those trades. Legends tell of forest people who could judge the honesty of a deal just by listening to the wind around it. Others speak of spirits watching from the trees, ensuring fairness. One particularly quirky tale involves a golden monkey who disrupted a deal by swapping the gold dust for mango peels. The merchants were confused. The monkey was not invited back. Further into the forest edge, you pass bundles of dried cola nuts being packed into woven baskets. These too were high-value trade items, sometimes worth more than gold by weight, depending on the region and the mood of local chiefs. Bitter, brain-jangling, and a little addictive, cola nuts were the Red Bull of their time. You're offered one by an old woman with sharp eyes and gold-threaded braids. You accept. It's bitter, all right. Your tongue practically does a somersault. She laughs silently and disappears behind a curtain of palm fronds. Back in the market proper, a man gestures for you to try on a belt made from dyed leather and cowrie shells. It jingles softly, every movement like a song. Cowries, too, were currency, imported from the Indian Ocean and traded deep into the continent. Economists might not call them gold, but here, a string of cowries could buy you a goat, a meal, or a favor. You walk past a group of traders counting their gold dust on scales shaped like miniature crocodiles and elephants, a reminder that utility and whimsy can coexist. The scales are precise, balanced on slivers of bone and bronze, the weights shaped like symbols of power or animals of myth. Some claim the designs were to honor deities. Others argue they were simply cool-looking. You lean toward both. As evening falls, the market begins to exhale. Fires are lit. Stews simmer. Music returns. Not loud, but enough to make your feet itch with rhythm. You watch as dancers practice slow, swaying movements, their bodies telling stories of trade, travel, and quiet fortune. One dancer mimics a camel losing its balance and earns a round of gentle applause. You join in, softly. You find a place to rest just outside the market walls, beneath a fig tree with roots like knotted ropes. You still hold the silence token in your palm. It feels smooth, warm from your touch, and heavy with a kind of quiet memory. As you drift off, you imagine the traders still negotiating under moonlight, neither side saying a word, yet both understanding everything. Perhaps this is the secret the silent trade knew all along, that sometimes the most meaningful exchanges happen without noise. Your dreams dissolve in a shimmer of silk and desert wind, and now you find yourself on a high, sunlit plateau, the horizon wide and rippling with heat. There's a scent in the air, clove, old paper, and just a trace of something metallic. You've arrived in the land of the Tuareg, desert dwellers whose blue robes stain their skin like ink, and whose legends ripple like tent fabric in the wind. Here, you meet a woman seated beneath a veiled awning, writing on a strip of cured leather with a delicate stick dipped in soot ink. She is Tin Hinan, or at least the story of her, folded into myth, memory, and matriarchal elegance. She doesn't speak to you directly. She doesn't have to. The Tuareg queen watches the wind, and the wind tells her everything. According to Tuareg oral tradition, Tin Hinan was a noble woman who crossed the Sahara centuries ago, accompanied by her servant Takamat and a caravan of loyal followers. Some say she fled war, others say she chased a vision, and a few whisper she simply grew bored and decided to build an empire. That's a mood. You trail behind her imagined procession, feet crunching over reddish sand, scattered with quartz. A handful of dates and a flask of goat's milk are your only provisions. But somehow, you never hunger. Tin Hinan doesn't lead like a conqueror. She floats, issuing orders with a lifted brow or the flick of a silver bracelet. The kingdom she founded, or inspired, was one of trade, resilience, and tact. The Tuareg didn't amass gold through conquest. They earned it as intermediaries, controlling the desert routes others feared. They knew the dunes, the seasons, and which oasis had the friendliest tea vendors. They also knew how to survive where others turned to bones. Historians still argue whether Tin Hinan was a literal queen, a composite of multiple leaders, or a poetic embodiment of Tuareg identity. Her tomb, however, is very real, discovered in the Hoggar Mountains, containing a skeleton adorned with gold and fine jewelry. Regal, even in rest. You enter the tomb not as an intruder, but as a visitor from a far-off dream. The air is cool. The walls are lined with carved symbols and faint echoes of ancestral chants. A bowl of gold dust sits beside her remains, untouched for centuries. It glows softly, like fire under glass. Outside, the Tuareg encampment pulses with quiet life. Men grind millet under the watch of children playing with carved wooden lizards. Women boil leather, dye cloth, and trade stories like currency. A camel nearby has its eyelashes braided in blue thread. Protection, they say, against sandstorms and bad vibes. Gold is not displayed here like it is in the Ghanaian or Malian courts. It's hidden, tucked into garments, sewn into belts, sometimes worn as earrings, shaped like crescent moons. The Tuareg deal in subtlety. You could be speaking to a caravan leader with a fortune tied around his waist in threadbare cloth, and never know it unless he smiled and the sunlight caught his teeth. One fringe tale shared over mint tea involves Tin Hinan once sending a letter written entirely in braided silk thread. The recipient had to unweave it line by line to read her message. Historians scoff at the practicality. Storytellers shrug and say, "Doesn't matter, she got her way." You learn that diplomacy here is an art of delay. No direct answer is ever truly final. Tea is poured in 3 rounds. The first bitter as life, the second strong as love, the third sweet as death. You sip slowly, letting the ritual wrap around your shoulders like a second robe. As the sun dips low, the dunes shift color, from gold to amber to violet. The wind picks up. You watch as a young Tuareg woman strings gold beads into her headscarf while humming an old song. No one rushes her. Everything is as it should be. The queen herself, Tin Hinan, sits once again at the horizon of memory, her silhouette against the sky, a question mark with a crown. Was she real? Was she myth? Perhaps in the world you now drift through, those two things are never very far apart. As the night takes hold, the Tuareg encampment becomes a galaxy of tiny fires. One by one, lanterns blink to life inside tents. A baby cries, a camel groans, and somewhere far off, a man begins reciting a story that started generations ago. and probably won't end until morning. You lie down on a woven mat, the stars above you arranged not in constellations, but in trade routes. You trace them with your eyes, linking one bright point to another until Tinhinan's kingdom becomes part of the sky itself, burning steady, silent, and gold. The morning arrives with a hush rather than a shout. The Tuareg have already begun to pack their world into bundles, homes folding into saddlebags, kitchens disappearing into woven baskets, and entire family histories gently tucked beneath camel blankets. You sip the last of your mint tea as the camp lifts itself into motion, a caravan forming like the tide pulling back into the desert. But this time, you part ways. You follow the Niger River eastward, its slow-moving waters glinting in the rising light. The breeze carries the scent of tamarind and the faint hum of drums drifting downstream from Timbuktu. Yes, that Timbuktu. Once the punchline of jokes about distant places, now slowly revealing itself to you as something far stranger, a university town in the sand. You arrive on foot, dusty and sore, just as a lecture ends in one of the city's many open-air courtyards. Students rise, stretching limbs and rubbing eyes. Some debate animatedly. Others yawn and wander off in search of mangoes. Welcome to the Sankore University, a center of learning that flourished while much of Europe struggled to remember how to spell philosophy. By the 14th and 15th centuries, Timbuktu had become a lighthouse for knowledge, and yes, a gold-rich one. Scholars came from all corners of the Islamic world, drawn by its libraries, debates, and manuscript copyists who could outscribe a printing press on a good day. It's said that thousands of manuscripts once filled this city on theology, astronomy, medicine, and yes, even love poems. A mainstream historical fact for your tired brain to chew on. The libraries of Timbuktu housed knowledge so deep that European explorers centuries later dismissed the city's richness because they assumed desert people couldn't possibly produce books. Classic case of judging a scroll by its cover. You pass under a low archway and find a room where students sit on mats, writing on wooden slates. A teacher in an indigo robe traces Arabic letters in the sand with a stick. He's explaining how lunar cycles affect river levels, which affects crop yield, which, yes, affects gold production. Everything is connected. Even the moon has opinions on your portfolio. Gold in Timbuktu wasn't just a currency. It funded scholarship, built madrasas, and kept scribes in ink and bread. Manuscript traders dealt not just in rare texts, but in gold leaf, used to embellish sacred calligraphy. Some texts shimmered with actual golden script, the page catching candlelight like starlight in your hands. You duck into a narrow shop off a side street. The walls are lined with manuscripts in Arabic, Ajami, and local scripts, some bound in goat leather, others wrapped in cloth printed with geometric symbols. A dusty tome flutters open and reveals a diagram of the human heart drawn centuries ago. Beside it, a note written in the margin. Check with the healer in Jene, she claims the liver argues back. You chuckle. Some debates are eternal. Historians still argue about how much gold flowed through Timbuktu in its heyday. Was it the primary reason for its fame, or was it secondary to the city's intellectual prestige? What's clear is this: merchants and scholars mingled here. You could trade gold for paper and then trade paper for immortality, if you wrote the right poem. Out in the square, a storyteller has gathered a small crowd. His tale? a satirical fable about a scribe who tried to smuggle gold dust into a manuscript by mixing it with ink. The result? A manuscript so heavy it cracked the table and gave the reader gold-flecked fingers for a week. Completely ridiculous, and yet someone offers to buy the story for a few cowries. So maybe not that ridiculous. You meet a woman named Aminata, a manuscript conservator who shows you how she applies a paste made from baobab sap and ground charcoal to restore brittle pages. Her hands move like dancers. Each stroke saves a word from being forgotten. She tells you about a manuscript buried in the desert to protect it from invaders, wrapped in leather, placed inside a clay jar, and hidden beneath a mango tree that no longer exists. Whether it's been found again, she doesn't say. And now, a fringe tidbit to end your afternoon. Some ancient manuscript pages were pressed with faint traces of perfume, usually frankincense or rose, meant to make reading a sensual act, not just an intellectual one. Your favorite book could, quite literally, smell like enlightenment. Evening falls, and the sun paints the walls of the city in golds and reds. You climb the minaret of Sankore slowly, your legs trembling more from awe than exhaustion. From the top, Timbuktu stretches around you like a scroll half unrolled, waiting to be read. You don't need to speak. You don't even need to move. You just need to remember. Below you, the river whispers, the scholars murmur, and the golden dust of ages swirls on the breeze. You close your eyes and let it all settle into your breath. You awaken not to sound, but to rhythm. Specifically, the slow, deliberate pulse of a mortar pounding millet, somewhere just beyond a veil of palm fronds. The scent of ground nuts and river mud wafts into your nostrils, and when your eyes open fully, you realize you're in Jenne now. The city glows with a softness that defies its age. It stands not on stone, but on silt, rising from the Niger River's floodplain like an earthen mirage. Its crown jewel, the Great Mosque, looms ahead, an enormous sandcastle of sacred geometry, baked each year by the sun and lovingly replastered by thousands of hands. This is no small village. At its height in the 15th and 16th centuries, Jenne was a thriving port of scholarship, religion, and, you guessed it, gold. The river may not have looked like a gold mine, but the boats that glided along it carried shimmering sacks of dust, hidden beneath piles of fish and textiles. You stroll through the Monday market, the city's heartbeat, which surges into life like a musical crescendo. Traders display their wares on mats and carved stools, dyed indigo cloth, leather amulets, desert roses, and bundles of dried hibiscus. Gold glints discreetly, braided into hair, sewn into hats, hidden in pouches made to look boring. You pass a man who is definitely pretending to sell onions, but is very obviously selling something that jingles. Gold here does not shout, it whispers, a mainstream historical fact to anchor yourself. Jenne was one of the most important entrepôts in the trans-Saharan gold trade, acting as both a warehouse and way station. Caravans from the forest regions to the south would bring gold, slaves, and cola nuts. Camel trains from the north would arrive with salt, glassware, and books. It was a perfect storm of necessity and opportunity. But there's another truth hiding beneath the mud brick beauty of the city. Water, not gold, ruled the tempo of life. Every season the Niger floods. Every year the people of Jenne adapt, building their homes with Banco clay, repairing cracks with careful smears of river-rich mud, holding their breath as the water creeps up. You meet an old woman named Sira who tells you, between bites of roasted yam, that the city doesn't just live with water, it listens to it. "The gold feeds us," she says, "but the river raises us." She's got gold earrings shaped like fish. It's a metaphor and a fashion statement. Historians still argue whether Janae's wealth ever surpassed that of Timbuktu, or whether it lived in its scholarly sibling's shadow. Some suggest Janae had the real power in its heyday, moving the muscle of trade while Timbuktu basked in its intellectual spotlight. Either way, you get the feeling Janae is that quiet genius in the corner of the classroom. Less talk, more hustle. You walk past the mosque again. It's the largest adobe building in the world, and the annual ritual of crepissage, the replastering, is equal parts construction project and festival. Everyone participates, even the children. Mudflies, laughter rings, and afterward, there's food. Always food. A local boy waves you over to show off his handmade scale. It's fashioned from a calabash bowl, 2 strings, and some very serious-looking pebbles. He carefully weighs a pinch of dust from a pouch he swears is real gold. You humor him, pretending to haggle over a handful of peanut brittle. The transaction ends with both of you grinning like fools. You overhear a story, passed like a baton between market women, about a man who tried to sell iron shavings painted gold. The scheme worked, until it rained. The lesson: never trust metal during monsoon season. You pause at a quiet side alley where an elderly griot leans against the wall, strumming a ngoni with cracked fingers. He sings of the river's first meeting with gold, when the water laughed and asked, "What do I need with something that sinks?" There's something almost mischievous in the music, a reminder that wealth is only as good as your ability to carry it through floodwaters. As the sun begins to dip, you find yourself atop a low rooftop, staring out across the city. Minarets rise like fingers from the earth. Rooftops shimmer with evening heat, and the market below slows its frenzy into something gentler, like a heartbeat preparing for sleep. A fringe tidbit for your dreams. One 16th century visitor wrote that Janae women painted their teeth black with herbs, believing it made them more beautiful and protected against bad spirits. You spot a flash of jet-black smile below and wonder if maybe they were on to something. You sit in stillness, the river reflecting streaks of copper and gold, and the sky yawning wider by the minute. The mosque behind you cools with the air, and the city settles into its night rhythm. Mud cooling, fires kindling, drums preparing to whisper stories into the darkness. You close your eyes and imagine the marketplace transformed into a golden tide. Silent traders, jingling wares, and the river's eternal murmur shaping it all like a potter with infinite patience. The sounds of Janae melt into the soft clinking of bracelets and the low murmur of voices as you open your eyes in yet another city along the golden braid of trade, Gao. Here, the landscape shifts again. Less mud brick, more sun-baked stone. You followed the Niger River even farther east, and now you find yourself in the oldest of Mali's royal cities, one that glittered with gold before many European cities had paved roads. You arrive just in time for a royal procession, not the kind with trumpets and peacocks, but one with drums made from hollowed logs, dancers swirling in patterns that mimic bird flight, and a quiet gravity that seems to press the dust beneath your feet just a little deeper. This, you learn, is a tribute day. Once a year, traders from outlying provinces and neighboring cultures would arrive in Gao to offer gifts of gold, livestock, textiles, and even live leopards, although those were politely returned. These tributes weren't just symbolic, they were deposits in the empire's vast social bank account. The ruler's job? To redistribute that wealth in ways that kept everyone just rich enough to stay loyal. One mainstream historical fact: Gao was once the capital of the Songhai Empire, which in its prime was one of the largest Islamic empires in history. Larger, in fact, than most European empires of the same era, though you may notice that no one mentioned that in your middle school textbook. You weave through the crowd toward the ancient royal compound, where the foundations of palaces still sleep beneath layers of sand. You're told that gold here wasn't just stored, it was displayed. Walls were rumored to be inlaid with golden studs, door handles shaped from nuggets, even ceremonial shields hammered from gold leaf and polished until they gleamed like mirrors. Were they functional? Probably not. Were they fabulous? Oh, absolutely. But here's where it gets wonderfully weird. There are stories of court officials being required to wear gold-threaded turbans so elaborate that they needed help standing still in the wind. One traveler claimed to have seen a man's turban collapse mid-audience, unraveling 3 feet of metallic lace onto the king's slippers. Historians still argue whether this account was satirical, exaggerated, or just the world's first documented wardrobe malfunction. You step into the Gao market, which has no stalls, just rugs laid out under date palms. Here, traders barter in 6 languages, and a boy walks by balancing 4 live chickens on his head while holding a string of cowries in his teeth. You don't even blink. This is Gao. You sit with a Songhai woman who grinds pigment for fabric dye. She shows you how certain river stones, when crushed, produce a deep blue powder that was traded as far as the Maghreb. This, she says, holding up the tiniest pinch, was once worth more than salt, almost as much as gold. You ask if she still uses it. She shrugs. Only for special guests. Around the corner, someone offers to sell you a ring, made from what he insists is emperor-grade gold. You ask what that means. He just grins. You do not buy the ring. As twilight descends, you wander out to the tomb of Askia, a 15th century mud pyramid built by Emperor Askia Muhammad, towering over the city like a baked thundercloud. The tomb is said to contain not only the body of the emperor, but also hidden chambers lined with gold bricks. Of course, no one's ever found them. You suspect they never will. Some treasures prefer myth to discovery. A group of boys plays near the tomb's base, tossing pebbles and laughing. One runs up to you and presses a stone into your palm. "Gold," he whispers. You look down. It's just a shiny rock. But then again, all gold was a shiny rock once. You sit under a baobab tree and listen to an elder explain the Songhai method of weighing gold, using brass weights shaped like birds, fish, even tiny boats. The shapes weren't just for beauty, they told stories. Every trade, he says, should have a tale. You nod. You've been living in one for days now. Your fringe tidbit for the night: some oral histories claim that Gao once experimented with using gold dust in ceremonial body paint, marking warriors and priests during certain lunar festivals. The idea was that gold would make their skin glow under firelight and signal favor from the gods. The practice was said to stop after someone broke into the ritual chamber and licked the high priest's arm. The gods apparently disapproved. The night settles over Gao like a warm blanket. Fires flicker, the procession fades, and the city's heartbeat slows to a sleepier rhythm. You lie back near the edge of the market, using your rolled-up robe as a pillow, and stare at the stars, imagining how much gold lies beneath you still, forgotten in tombs, marketplaces, and dreams. And just as your eyelids grow heavy, the drums start up again. A soft, pulsing rhythm, not for ceremony, not for trade, just for the night, just to remind you that the story continues, even when you sleep. This time, you wake to music. A melody so strange and delicate that you're not sure whether it's made by strings, wind, or water itself. The desert is behind you now, and the air feels different, more humid, alive. You've drifted south into the lusher, greener lands of the forest kingdoms, and standing before you like a golden fortress wrapped in jungle vines is the city of Ife. Unlike the sprawling, sun-baked cities of the Sahel, Ife feels like a secret someone left in the trees. It's quieter, more symmetrical, with broad avenues leading to courtyards paved in crushed quartz and shaded by massive, ancient trees. Even the birds seem to sing in organized harmony, like they've agreed not to interrupt the architecture. You've heard whispers of Ife before, a sacred city, a cradle of the Yoruba people. But no one told you about the statues. Life-sized heads made of bronze, brass, and, yes, gold alloy, staring calmly at nothing and everything all at once. The detail is so fine, the symmetry so precise, that for centuries European scholars insisted these couldn't possibly have been made by Africans. Naturally, they were wrong. Deeply, laughably wrong. One mainstream historical fact you can't ignore: the Ife bronzes, discovered mostly in the early 20th century, are among the most technically advanced sculptures of their time. Anywhere in the world. We're talking realism that Michelangelo would have nodded at. Smooth brows, etched facial markings, carefully rendered lips, and, in a few cases, ceremonial headpieces laced with gold leaf. You find yourself drawn to one such head, resting in a shrine. The air smells like roasted plantains and palm oil. The figure's eyes seem to follow you, not in menace but in gentle curiosity, as if it's asking, "What story did you bring with you?" Art here wasn't just decoration, it was divine architecture, capturing the spiritual essence of kings and queens, warriors and priests. According to Yoruba belief, these heads weren't mere portraits. They were vessels, gateways through which ancestral power could observe and guide the living. Historians still argue whether Ife functioned as a theocracy, a confederation of guilds, or a more centralized monarchy. What's clearer is this: the gold and bronze poured into these sculptures wasn't wasted luxury. It was sacred investment. Each casting was a negotiation with the gods. As you walk through the market, it's hard to tell what's for sale and what's for worship. Beaded necklaces sparkle in the light, some strung with gold seed beads, so small they look like grains of millet. Griots recite family histories under mango trees, and a woman offers to read your destiny using cowrie shells and a wooden tray. You accept, mostly because she promises you'll live a long life and meet a surprisingly talkative parrot. The price? 1 gold flake, or a song. You sing. A fringe detail catches your ear from a nearby woodcarver. Some say that Ife artisans once created a life-sized gold sculpture of a tortoise that moved using hidden wheels and a series of pulleys. A mechanical marvel, A gift for the king, or possibly just an elaborate prank. No one agrees. Further into the city, you witness the Oro cult at dusk. Its members cloaked in silence, their faces obscured, carrying staffs that jingle softly with gold charms, shaped like lightning bolts and lizards. The atmosphere turns charged, and even the birds go quiet. A woman near you whispers, "They are the breath between the words." You're not sure what it means, but it sounds true. As twilight descends, Ife glows, literally. Oil lamps dot every veranda, flickering off bronze masks and golden jewelry with an almost performative warmth. Children chase fireflies along streets lined with terracotta tiles, each step a memory made. You find your resting place beside a fountain shaped like a calabash, water flowing gently over its edge. An elder sits beside you, sharpening a blade not for war, but for ceremony. He says that in Ife, wealth isn't about how much gold you own. It's about how beautifully you shape it and how quietly you carry it. Before you sleep, he places a small gold bead in your palm. Not for trade, he says, for remembering. You close your hand. The bead is warm. The stars above Ife don't twinkle. They shine with the soft pulse of breath. And just like that, you drift again. You open your eyes to the scent of ash and orange peel. The air here is thick, green, alive, humid enough that your clothes feel like they're hugging you back. Birds chatter in tree canopies overhead, and somewhere in the distance, a gong rings. Not once, but 3 times. You're in the kingdom of Benin now, the old one, long before British ships came nosing around. Before museums swallowed its treasures. The city sprawls in subtle order, its earthen walls tall and red, stretching for miles in graceful curves and sharp defenses. Ife may have been sacred, but Benin is powerful, structured, intentional, ruled not just by gods, but by a well-oiled bureaucracy. You walk past guards in coral bead chest plates, their staffs carved with crocodiles and suns, each one watching you, but not intruding. At the center of it all stands the Oba's palace. Not a palace like in European fairy tales, but a complex of courtyards, shrines, workshops, and gardens. Everything breathes. Mud walls exhale cool air. Trees shade the walkways like parasols made of wind. And gold is here too, though it's not what first catches the eye. Instead, it's the brass plaques. Mounted along palace pillars and shrine walls, these plaques are history in metal. Rows of regal figures, warriors, page boys, and Portuguese merchants, all rendered in bold relief. They tell stories the court scribes may never have written down. Victories, arrivals, seasons of abundance. And yes, some figures wear tunics with gold trim, their necks heavy with metal that once shimmered under ceremonial oil. A mainstream historical fact, by the 16th century, Benin had established formal trade with the Portuguese, who were as dazzled by its sophistication as they were by its gold. The kingdom exported pepper, ivory, and slaves, and in return received firearms, fabrics, and gilded trinkets. Though gold was not mined here in vast quantities like in Mali, the Oba's court accumulated it steadily, weaving it into a web of trade, ritual, and pageantry. You pass through the ivory carver's quarter, where artists sit cross-legged, chiseling tusks into delicate scenes, a leopard hunt, a coronation, a spirit appearing in a swirl of smoke. One carver beckons you over and shows you a pendant. 2 heads, back to back, cast in gold. Twin spirits, he says. Balance. You ask if it's for sale. He raises an eyebrow. You cannot buy balance. Historians still argue how centralized Benin truly was. Was the Oba an absolute ruler or a ceremonial figurehead? How much autonomy did the guilds and city chiefs truly have? What's clear is that the system worked, at least for a long time. Gold flowed in not as raw wealth, but as polished symbols, sacred ornaments, and political currency. A shrine catches your eye, low to the ground, surrounded by feathers and palm fronds. Inside sits a small bronze figure holding a gold nugget in one hand and a snake in the other. The symbolism is lost on you, but you get the sense this spirit's not to be trifled with. A nearby priest tells you the gold is real, but untouched for generations. He hasn't asked for it back yet, he says, tapping his temple. You wander into the women's market next, where the real trade happens. Not the ceremonies, but the daily negotiations that feed a city. Here, gold glints in earrings and nose rings, threaded into children's hair and stored quietly in the folds of patterned skirts. You learn quickly that asking someone to trade gold directly is like asking someone to hand you their diary. It's personal, symbolic, intimate. A fringe tidbit you overhear from a court musician. There was once an instrument made entirely of golden strings, played only on the Oba's birthday. No one remembers the song, but everyone agrees it made the birds stop singing. Whether that's true or just a lyrical exaggeration, you don't ask. The idea is beautiful enough. By twilight, the city begins to change color. The earth deepens to rust, the lanterns burn tangerine, and the Oba's palace glows as if lit from within. You find yourself in a quiet courtyard, watching a group of dancers rehearse, bodies like rippling fabric, movements echoing ancient rituals. Gold dust has been applied to their foreheads, catching every flicker of flame. Each step seems to invoke something just out of reach. As the night winds into stillness, a woman offers you a small parcel wrapped in cloth. Inside, a gold pendant shaped like a python eating its tail. A story with no end, she says, to remind you some treasures can't be hoarded. You thank her with a bow and no words. Somehow, silence feels right. You lie down beneath a carved lintel, where the night breeze drifts lazily through reed mats. The sounds of Benin fade into rhythmic hush. A drum in the distance, a fire crackling, a whispered prayer sent skyward on a ribbon of smoke, and then nothing but golden dreams. You awaken to the smell of smoke, sweet, not acrid, and realize you're standing beneath a sky so blue it looks painted. A pair of tall trees sway lazily overhead, and the horizon ahead is nothing but green, forest, hills, and the occasional flicker of something polished and bright. You've arrived in the Akan lands, home of the fabled Ashanti kingdom, where gold wasn't just wealth, it was identity. Here, you don't find gold. Gold finds you. Even the earth feels rich beneath your feet, red and warm and glittering with mineral life. The sun here shines differently, as if in agreement with the kingdom's entire aesthetic. Opulence with a straight face. A young boy runs past you with gold dust smudged on his cheek, laughing as he dodges chickens and elders with equal agility. You follow a procession winding its way toward Kumasi, the Ashanti capital. No one walks here. They glide, regal and unbothered. Women balance trays of food on their heads like floating temples. Chiefs wear cloth woven in patterns, that seem to ripple when they move. And in the center of it all, the golden stool. This is not a chair. It is the chair. The Ashanti believe it holds the soul of their nation, descended from the sky and never allowed to touch the ground. Made of wood and adorned with gold, it is so sacred that not even the king sits on it. It gets its own umbrella, thank you very much. A mainstream historical fact. The Ashanti Kingdom, particularly in the 18th and 19th centuries, was one of the most powerful and economically complex states in West Africa. Its gold mines supplied European markets for centuries, and its sophisticated political and military systems rivaled any contemporary kingdom, African or European. You trail the Golden Stool's guardians to the royal palace, passing storerooms and treasury huts with doors carved in the shapes of birds, stools, and open hands. It's said that the Ashanti king kept so much gold that he measured wealth not in currency, but in weights. Not just any weights either, brass ones shaped like crocodiles biting snakes, men drumming, or two-headed turtles arguing over a pot of soup. Tiny sculptures, each a proverb in disguise. You pause to examine a merchant's table covered with these weights. He explains one to you, a gold weight shaped like a bird looking behind it. It means return to fetch what you left. You nod, then ask what the turtle one means. He leans in and whispers, "Don't trust a dinner invitation from someone with two mouths." Historians still argue whether the Ashanti's legendary gold hoards were exaggerated by European traders or underreported by Ashanti scribes to keep invaders guessing. One Dutch visitor claimed the floor of the treasury was layered with dust so fine it had to be swept daily, or risk being mistaken for dirt. That sounds inconveniently luxurious. You're invited to a naming ceremony, and as part of the tradition, small gold nuggets are presented to the newborn. Not as a gift, but as a greeting. Let your life be as bright, they say, and as heavy. Later, you see those same nuggets carefully placed in a woven basket, lined with cloth dyed in deep indigo and ochre. A baby snoozes beside them, unconcerned with his sudden net worth. You wander into a goldsmith's workshop next, open air, fragrant with beeswax and wood smoke. An elder shows you how he casts beads using the lost wax method, a technique so precise it predates many European metalworking traditions. His apprentice accidentally drops a small, hot bead onto his own foot and howls. Everyone laughs. The gold has chosen its owner, someone jokes. A fringe tidbit floats by during a discussion over yams. There's a rumor of a lake deep in Ashanti territory whose bottom is lined with gold dust, invisible to the eye but detectable to fish, who are said to be shinier and more flavorful than anywhere else. Whether true or not, the fish seller insists her tilapia are worth their weight in bullion. As twilight approaches, you watch the king's drummers rehearse. Rows of men pounding rhythms that sound like dialogue, like argument, like seduction. Their drums are inlaid with gold studs, and some even shaped like ancestral heads. Each beat carries a message. Warnings, welcomes, weather reports, even gossip. You ask what today's rhythm says. A drummer grins. The visitor with dusty shoes has walked far enough. That night, you sleep in a compound ringed with carved wooden panels, each one telling a story in silence. You dream of golden stools that float, of birds that carry messages in their beaks, and of storytellers weighing their words with the same reverence they'd give to a nugget of pure ore. The Ashanti do not worship gold. They honor it. They teach it manners. And in return, it never forgets their name. The first thing you feel is rhythm, deep and heavy, not just heard, but felt in your chest like a heartbeat. You're in the kingdom of Congo now, farther south than before, where the river is wide, the trees tall, and everything breathes in patterns. The language has cadence. The footsteps have bounce. Even the chickens here strut like they've rehearsed their entrances. The city of Mbanza, Congo stretches along a high ridge, and the view from the top is the kind that steals your words. To the west, the Atlantic winks in the distance. To the east, the great Congo River cuts a silver ribbon through endless forest. This was a kingdom that knew how to look outward, toward trade, toward diplomacy, and occasionally toward gold. Unlike the kingdoms you've seen so far, Congo's wealth was measured in more than precious metal. It flowed in raffia cloth, ivory tusks, copper bracelets, and religious relics. But gold still gleamed in ceremonial places, in subtle adornments, and in the minds of its foreign partners, who never stopped sniffing for it. A mainstream historical fact for your travel-weary brain: the Kingdom of Congo was already an established power by the 14th century, with a centralized political system, structured provinces, and trade routes extending from Angola to present-day Gabon. By the late 15th century, it had entered into formal diplomatic relations with the Portuguese. Letters were exchanged, ambassadors sent, kings baptized. One even wrote directly to the Pope. You stroll the royal compound and find it brimming with hybrid beauty. Thatched roofs meet tiled ones. Stone foundations peek out from beneath palm fronds. The architecture isn't confused. It's layered, like a city that absorbed every visitor and turned them into something more interesting. Here, a Catholic chapel sits beside a traditional court, both painted the same earthy ochre. Gold flows not as coins, but as symbolism. It adorns crosses held by newly Christianized nobles. It wraps around fetishes preserved in secret groves. Some elders say the gold was buried in layers, literal and metaphorical, to keep its power from being overused. Gold that shows itself too much forgets who owns it, one says, tapping his head. You sit with a priest who claims the church bells once rang on golden hinges. You raise a skeptical eyebrow. He grins. I said once. Then he hands you a brass crucifix flecked with what might be real gold, or just stubborn optimism. It's beautiful either way. In the nearby market, raffia cloth flutters like sails. Women squat beside baskets of cola nuts, fish, and carved wooden spoons. A trader offers you a belt strung with manillas, crescent-shaped copper, and bronze bracelets that once served as currency. You ask if any are gold. He shakes his head. Too soft to tie your pants. Historians still argue about the true volume of gold in Congo trade. Some say the region held secret veins that only locals knew. Others believe gold entered mostly through secondary routes from the Lunda and Chokwe peoples inland. Whatever the truth, the people of Congo never seemed overly obsessed with hoarding it. Gold wasn't the sun here. It was just one star in a sky of many. A fringe tidbit catches your ear in a back alley. During the height of Congo's diplomatic relations with Europe, it's said that a Portuguese envoy gifted the king a golden globe etched with the known world. The king reportedly laughed and said, "You've forgotten the rivers." No one knows where that globe ended up, but you secretly hope it's buried somewhere under a banana tree, still arguing with the soil. As evening spreads its fingers across the hills, you join a circle of dancers preparing for a fertility festival. Their faces are painted in swirling white patterns, and small gold discs shimmer from their wrists. The dance is half prayer, half physics experiment, bodies spinning with such precision you wonder how no one collides. You notice something odd. Every dancer's necklace holds a small gold bead shaped like a spider. You ask why. A boy whispers, "Because the spider hears the stories first." You look down. A real spider is watching from the rafters. It blinks at you. Probably. Your host for the evening brings out a dish of smoked catfish and cassava mash and serves it on a carved platter with inlaid gold along the rim. "For honored guests only," she says. You feel unworthy but accept it anyway. The fish tastes like thunder, softened by honey. You clean your plate. That night, you lie on a mat inside a longhouse, the roof patterned with woven stars. Outside, the forest sings, frogs, birds, insects, and something larger, deeper, like a drum being played underwater. You drift slowly, the gold spider necklace resting beside your head, listening for stories no one else has heard yet. Morning greets you with smoke from a cooking fire and the hum of chanting, not loud or frenzied, but meditative, the kind of sound that softens even your bones. You've traveled even farther east, where the savanna blends into mountain slopes and the mist clings to the earth like a shawl. Welcome to the kingdom of Buganda. You're greeted by someone wearing a bark cloth robe dyed a muted ochre. Around their neck, a necklace with gold beads shaped like drums. You ask about it. They smile and say, "It's not decoration, it's memory." That's the kind of place Buganda is. Gold isn't just wealth, it's a kind of record-keeping. The capital city, Mengo, is a calm sprawl of homesteads and royal compounds, draped in banana trees and marked by sacred hills. It doesn't glitter like Ashanti, it doesn't roar like Mali. But beneath its soft rhythms lies the story of a kingdom that became the heart of East Africa's political and cultural evolution. A mainstream historical fact worth holding on to. Buganda, by the 18th and 19th centuries, had developed into a centralized, highly organized monarchy with systems of tribute, taxation, and regional administration that rivaled any state in the pre-colonial world. Its navy patrolled Lake Victoria in fleets of elegant, hand-carved canoes. And yes, gold did flow, though not in rivers. Rather, gold here came through trade. Merchants from the Swahili coast, from the Congo Basin, even from Sudan. In Buganda, gold wasn't mined. It was welcomed, woven into its social fabric through dowries, diplomatic gifts, and spiritual rituals. You see it in the way the Kabaka's king's ceremonial throne sparkles with golden accents. Nothing garish, just precise, like someone laid down a sentence in gold punctuation. You pass through the royal enclosure, where grass grows evenly and intentionally, trimmed as if the earth itself has manners. A group of royal drummers rehearses in the shade, and their instruments are decorated with gold pins, said to represent ancestral spirits. Each drum speaks a different name, a drummer tells you. You ask what yours would be. He taps a beat and says, "The one who walks while listening." Historians still argue whether Buganda's rise was due to its military strength, its agricultural abundance, or its uncanny ability to absorb other cultures without losing itself. The answer, of course, is probably yes. In the artisans' quarter, you watch a group of smiths polish gold inlays into ceremonial knives and headpieces. The tools are rudimentary: a stone, a cloth, a curved bit of antler. But the results are breathtaking. One elder explains that some pieces aren't meant to shine in sunlight, but by moonlight. A king should glow when everyone else sleeps, he says. You meet a young girl with a gold ring on her smallest toe. It's for my future husband, she says. Or for the mango tree spirit, if he gets there first. You're not sure whether she's joking. A fringe tidbit filters to you from a group of historians gathered under a fig tree. There's a tale that the Kabaka once received a golden spear from a Nubian trader, used only for ceremonies involving eclipses. The spear, they say, glowed brighter during lunar shadows. Was it reflective metal, magic, mercury coating? No one knows. But everyone agrees it vanished mysteriously. The lake is never far away. Lake Victoria, so vast it feels like an ocean, gleams in the distance. You ride a canoe across its surface, joining a group of traders carrying cloth, salt, and, you guessed it, gold beads hidden inside gourds. One of the rowers hums a song that turns out to be a warning about trusting goats with your jewelry. On a small island, you're shown a sacred grove where offerings are left to ancestral spirits. Among the feathers, carved wood, and smooth stones, you spot gold leaf pressed into tree bark. The spirits don't need much, your guide says. Just a little shimmer to know we remember. As the day ends, you dine with a family who serve you grilled tilapia, wrapped in banana leaves and spiced with something citrusy. They pour water from a jug etched with tiny gold spirals, imported long ago and handed down for generations. The family elder tells you gold has no voice in Buganda unless it's gifted. You never own gold, she says. You borrow it from a story. You sleep in a reed hut overlooking the lake, the sounds of frogs and distant drumming forming a lullaby older than the throne itself. The air smells of ash, lake water, and mango blossoms. And in your dreams, someone hands you a gold ring shaped like a listening ear. The ground crunches beneath your feet, not with dust, but with the brittle husks of millet, dried grasses, and scattered shells. You're now deep in the Sahel again, but farther east, where the land sharpens into hills and highlands. Welcome to the Sultanate of Darfur. Yes, that Darfur, though long before modern headlines claim the name, it was a center of culture, trade, and power. You're standing in a place that once thrived at the crossroads of Africa, where desert caravans met the grassy frontier and golden tribute passed through hands faster than camels could blink. The city of Al-Fashir rolls out before you, not a stone and mortar capital, but a rhythmic sprawl of compounds, grain stores, camel corrals, and a surprisingly busy poetry market. Yes, you heard that right. In Darfur, poets once received gold in payment, not just for flattery, but for satire. Gold wasn't simply currency, it was applause, a mainstream historical fact. By the 17th and 18th centuries, Darfur was a major regional power with centralized administration under its sultans, and its economy rested firmly on trans-Saharan trade. Gold came to Darfur from the Central African interior, especially Wadai and beyond, and was exchanged for horses, cloth, and weapons. The sultans controlled trade routes with a grip as precise as any customs officer, and they made sure everyone paid their tolls, especially if they were shiny. You visit a customs station, a low, round hut with carved spears crossed above the door. Inside, A man in indigo robes shows you the weight stones they used to measure gold dust, small, flat, and carved with star symbols. "The stars never cheat," he says, brushing a finger across one. "But traders do." You join a caravan just setting out, loaded with cola nuts, ostrich feathers, and yes, a locked chest said to contain gold, destined for a noble bride in Wadai. No one is allowed to open it, but a child rides atop it anyway, singing songs that rhyme camel with too many dates. The others nod in approval. Historians still argue whether the Darfur sultans personally hoarded the gold, or whether it was redistributed in the form of tribute, rewards, and gifts. One account describes a banquet where gold nuggets were baked into dumplings, both an offering and a loyalty test. Did they really eat them? You'll never know. Probably not. Probably. In a craftsman's tent, you examine a curved dagger with a hilt, wrapped in gold thread and ivory beads. It's purely ceremonial, of course. The blade is dull, but the handle whispers importance. You ask what it's used for. "To swear oaths," the blacksmith says, "and occasionally to slice bread with extreme dignity." You wander through the women's section of the market, where gold is braided into hair, sewn into hems, and dangled from veils like punctuation marks. You see earrings shaped like scorpions, rings that double as perfume holders, and bracelets thin enough to disappear inside a teacup. A woman invites you to try one on. "You have trustworthy wrists," she says. You don't ask what that means. A fringe tidbit from a traveling singer. One sultan reportedly had a mirror framed entirely in gold and used it to settle disputes among courtiers. Whoever looked less nervous in the reflection won. Whether it worked is still up for debate. But the mirror, he adds, was stolen by a camel who saw its own face and decided to elope. He might be joking, might not. You visit a school for scribes, where boys copy texts on wooden tablets. The teacher shows you one particularly fine stylus with a gold inlay. "It belonged to a poet who once made a sultan cry," he says proudly. "He was paid with camels, cloth, and a wife he didn't ask for." As dusk settles, you're invited to a czar ceremony, a spirit possession ritual blending pre-Islamic and Sufi traditions. The drums throb like a pulse. Dancers whirl. And when a woman enters trance, she's adorned with a thin gold chain that runs from her nose ring to her earring, said to guide the spirit's path. Whether you believe it or not, the hair on your neck stands up. You eat with a merchant family beneath an acacia tree, your food served on a copper tray inlaid with what might be gold or just very confident brass. The stew is spicy, the tea bitter, and the conversation light. You ask if they've ever seen the fabled gold mines of Wadi Howar. They shrug. "Maybe," one says. "Or maybe the sand swallowed them." That night, as you lie under a sky so clear it could crack, someone places a gold coin on your chest. Not for keeping, but for dreaming. "Tell the Sultan your wishes," they say. He listens at midnight. You drift off wondering what kind of dreams require gold for postage. The sound is different here. Less drumming, more tinkling, like wind chimes made of bone, wood, and delicate metal. You're standing on a high plateau now, where clouds roll lazily across the ridges and the air smells faintly of honey wine. This is the Horn of Africa, and you've arrived in the ancient kingdom of Aksum. It feels quieter here, but not because of stillness. No, Aksum is not still. It is simply old. The kind of old that leans back in its chair and smiles while others argue about the details. You stand beneath towering stone obelisks, stelae, some broken, some still upright, pointing at the sky like bookmarks in the past. The tallest one once stood over 30 meters high, carved from a single block of granite. Someone here had confidence. And gold? Oh yes, there's gold. Maybe not the loud, showy kind you've seen in Ashanti or Mali, but coinage, real, royal, state-approved gold coins, minted long before many European powers figured out how to stamp their monarchs' faces into shiny circles. Here in Aksum, kings had already been there, done that, and added Greek inscriptions just to flex, a mainstream historical fact. Between the 1st and 7th centuries CE, Aksum was one of the most powerful trading empires in the ancient world. Its ports linked the Roman world to India, Arabia, and Inner Africa. And yes, Aksum was one of the very first states anywhere to adopt Christianity officially, under King Ezana. You wander through a small museum tucked inside a former monastery. A monk shows you a faded map where Aksum sits like the sun in a solar system of trade routes. He points at an ancient port called Adulis. That's where the gold flowed out, he says, and spices, and ivory, and ideas. You ask what flowed in. He smiles. Trouble, mostly. Historians still argue how much gold Aksum controlled directly, and how much simply passed through its hands. Some claim there were active gold mines in the region. Others say the kingdom taxed trade so effectively that it didn't need to dig for treasure. It simply waited for the world to hand it over. You step into an old coinmaker's chamber. It smells like wax and rust. On a table lies a mold used to mint gold coins bearing the face of King Caleb. You trace it with your finger. The details are soft now, but the crown is still visible. Tall, pointed, ceremonial. A local boy watching you says, "That one had 6 elephants." You blink. "As pets?" He shrugs. "Probably." Later, you sit with a family making injera in clay pans over open flame. They place a golden cup in front of you. Small, simple, heavy. It's used to serve tej, a honey wine that glows amber in the firelight. One sip, and you understand why Aksum's kings toasted every alliance with it. It tastes like diplomacy with a hint of sass. A fringe tidbit rolls in from a weaver who's been listening in. It's said that during the reign of Queen Judith, a shadowy, possibly apocryphal figure who allegedly destroyed Aksum's churches, a golden cross went missing from the cathedral's altar and was later recovered by a lion. A real lion, you ask? He nods gravely. A very religious lion. You laugh, but you do glance around, just in case. In the early evening, you follow a procession to the Church of Mariam Sion, said to be the oldest church in sub-Saharan Africa. Candles flicker along the walls. One priest swings incense in a censer adorned with gold threads. He tells you that once, Aksum's gold coins were so trusted they were accepted in Byzantium without question. Aksum spoke in metal, he says, and the world answered. As the ceremony ends, a choir begins to chant. Their voices rise like smoke, slow and sure, winding through the air and into your ears like lullabies, disguised as prayers. You close your eyes. The song is in Ge'ez, a language older than time. And though you don't understand the words, you feel them. You sleep that night in a stone guest house near the ruins of the old palace. Outside, the stelae stand like sentinels. The stars blink down in approval. In your dreams, you walk through a market where everything is weighed in gold. including promises, silences, and the softness of good bread. And somewhere, a lion is still guarding a cross. You wake to the sound of hooves crunching salt-crusted earth. The air smells like distance, dry, vast, and shimmering. You're in the Sahara now, or at least on the edge of it, where mirages dance and traders once moved gold in silence, step after patient step. This is the domain of the Tuareg, nomads, merchants, and sometime kings of the desert. No palaces here, no towering cities, and yet more gold may have passed beneath your feet in a single day of this region's trading past than in any medieval European mint across a decade. The sand stretches in all directions, dotted with scrub and the low silhouettes of camels. A caravan passes, a long, slow wave of motion, bells jingling from their harnesses, and one particularly arrogant goat tied to the last saddle. The lead Tuareg nods at you, his face wrapped in a deep indigo tegelmust that stains his skin blue. "You walk or you ride?" he asks. You ride, obviously. A mainstream historical fact, the Tuareg played a crucial role in the trans-Saharan gold trade from at least the 7th century onward. They controlled the routes connecting sub-Saharan gold-producing regions to North African markets, particularly those in Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt. Gold came north. Salt, cloth, and books went south. And if you wanted safe passage, you paid in gold dust, or you took your chances with the desert. You reach a resting point marked only by a cluster of acacia trees and the charred remains of old fires. A woman offers you tea, black as ink, sweet as forgiveness, and poured 3 times, first bitter, then balanced, then sugary. "Like love," she says, "the teapot has a gold handle." Of course it does. Nearby, a trader shows you an old camel saddle decorated with gold coins stitched into the leather. "For luck," he explains, "and to mislead bandits." You ask how that works. He grins. "Bandits love shiny things, so we leave shiny things in the wrong place." Historians still argue over just how much gold passed through the Tuaregs' hands. Some say they merely escorted the merchants. Others suggest the Tuareg taxed trade so ruthlessly and cleverly that gold accumulated in secret caches, tucked away in oases and hidden valleys. There are even legends of entire gold caravans swallowed by sandstorms, their treasure never recovered. Somewhere beneath your camel's hooves may lie a chest of coins, watching the sky and waiting. A fringe tidbit you overhear during a water stop. One Tuareg prince supposedly wore sandals with gold soles, not for status, but because he believed gold grounded his dreams. He never had nightmares, the story goes, but he did walk a little slower. You stop at a market town along the desert's edge, perhaps Bilma or Agadez. No one is quite sure anymore. Traders from the south bring cola nuts and cloth. Those from the north, mirrors and perfumes. You see a necklace of gold beads so small they look like tears. It's for a wedding, the seller tells you. Or a funeral. Depends on how the marriage goes. You chuckle and he gives you a discount. As the sun dips toward the horizon, everything turns bronze, then amber, then gold. Literally, one of the camels nearby is carrying polished gold discs wrapped in animal skins. You catch a glimpse as the pack slips open, and for a second, the light bounces so hard, you blink. It's like the sun punched you in the eye with joy. That night, the Tuaregs spread carpets across the sand and set up camp. A small fire crackles. Someone plays a one-stringed instrument, plucked gently, like it's telling secrets. Others sit quietly, sipping tea, braiding each other's hair, fixing saddles. No one rushes. Time in the desert moves only when invited. You lie on your back and look up. The stars here don't twinkle. They blaze. Your host passes you a tiny gold ring. It has no gem, no inscription, just a simple curve. Found in the dunes, he says. Might be ancient, might be my cousin's. You ask if he wants it back. He shrugs. Gold belongs to whoever dreams with it. And you do. You fall asleep to the smell of sand, tea, and firewood. Around you, the desert shifts. Beneath you, 1,000 stories lie buried, some in bones, some in salt, some in gold. The silence is thick, but it hums with memory. And somewhere, far below, a lost caravan smiles. The breeze is cooler now, fragrant with eucalyptus and the faint tang of sea air. You're perched on the southeastern coast of Africa, where cliffs meet the Indian Ocean, and where once stood a gleaming stone city, forgotten by time. Great Zimbabwe. No introduction needed, just the dry crunch of gravel under your sandals as you step into an ancient city carved from granite and ambition. The ruins rise around you in curved walls and turreted towers, assembled without mortar, yet still standing centuries later, defiant in their silence. Welcome to the capital of a kingdom that traded more gold than most of Europe could dream of. A mainstream historical fact: Great Zimbabwe was the heart of a powerful kingdom that flourished between the 11th and 15th centuries. It controlled regional gold fields and acted as a key hub in the Indian Ocean trade network, sending gold and ivory to Swahili city-states like Kilwa and Sofala, where Persian and Arab ships waited to carry it off to Asia and beyond. You wander through the hill complex where kings once lived among carved soapstone birds and ritual platforms. The great enclosure, its walls over 30 feet high, curves around you like a protective embrace. No one knows for sure what happened here, but you can feel the weight of ceremony, strategy, and yes, great wealth. There's no visible gold here anymore, no coins, no gleaming artifacts left in plain view. But every stone whispers of it. You touch one, and the surface is cool, solid, time-worn. Somewhere in the city, gold was stored, weighed, and bartered. Possibly hidden, possibly stolen, possibly sung to sleep by poets. Historians still argue about who built Great Zimbabwe. For centuries, colonialists claimed it couldn't have been built by Africans. Nonsense, of course. Today, most scholars agree it was the ancestral Shona people who constructed it with engineering skill and economic reach that puts medieval Europe's muddy castles to shame. A fringe tidbit you overhear from a local guide. There's a legend of a gold disc inscribed with a map of the stars, buried beneath the great enclosure's stone conical tower. The catch? It only reveals itself to those who know how to hum the right tune. The guide hums something. Nothing happens. Guess I need more practice, he shrugs. You share a meal with local elders who serve sadza, a maize porridge with spicy peanut sauce and grilled goat. They speak of the city's past as if it were last week. People came from Arabia, from India, even from China, one says. They came for gold, but they stayed for conversation. In the museum, you find a single gold bead no bigger than a lentil. It rests in a glass case on a velvet pillow, unassuming until you look closely. The bead is patterned, etched with tiny marks like tally scores. Was it a unit of trade, a love token, or simply something pretty that once caught the sun at the right angle? The label reads, "Function unknown." You prefer it that way. You step outside just in time to see a hawk swoop low over the ruins. It circles once, twice, and vanishes into the afternoon scout. A child nearby points to a soapstone carving of a bird and says, "That one's its grandfather." You don't argue. You take a trail down toward a spring-fed stream, where once gold dust was likely panned by hand, sifted from riverbeds, and packed into gourd jars. You kneel, scoop some water, and feel the grains slide over your fingers. Nothing sparkles, but your palms feel heavier anyway. At dusk, the ruins shift color, stone going golden, then orange, then deep, purplish gray. The shadows grow longer, and the birds quiet down. A flute begins playing somewhere in the dark, and the notes echo strangely off the stone. You imagine them bouncing from one chamber to another, carrying secrets. Before sleep, you lie back inside the great enclosure, your bedroll spread beneath a shallow overhang. The stars peer through cracks in the wall. You trace constellations with your finger, wondering if the gold that once lived here still remembers the way home. And if it dreams of you too, you wake with the smell of sea salt and wood smoke in your nose and the slow creak of tide-hardened timbers beneath your feet. You're not on land anymore. You're bobbing gently on the Indian Ocean in a stitched dhow boat, your sails catching a morning breeze that smells faintly of cloves and ambition. Welcome to the Swahili coast. You're not in one kingdom now, but dozens. Kilwa, Mombasa, Malindi, Zanzibar. Each a shimmering city-state strung like pearls along the shore, their coral stone buildings catching sunlight and salt spray alike. These were the gatekeepers of Indian Ocean trade. And oh yes, they knew gold. They didn't mine it, but they absolutely moved it. A mainstream historical fact. Between the 10th and 15th centuries, the Swahili coast thrived as a maritime trade powerhouse, linking the African interior to Arabia, Persia, India, and even China. Gold was shipped out from inland kingdoms like Great Zimbabwe through ports like Sofala and Kilwa, then funneled into global markets. These city-states spoke a blend of Bantu and Arabic, wore Chinese silk, read Persian poetry, and built homes of coral and carved teak. You dock at Kilwa Kisiwani, once the richest city on the coast. Marco Polo allegedly heard tales of it. Ibn Battuta visited and called it one of the most beautiful places he'd ever seen. You step off the boat and find narrow alleys shaded by archways, where scents of cinnamon, fried cassava, and aged manuscripts mingle. In a market courtyard, a gold merchant lets you handle a coin from the 13th century, minted with Arabic script on one side and a symbol of a dhow on the other. "Imported gold, local pride," he says, tucking it back into a velvet pouch. You ask how many more there are. He just smiles. Enough to sink a camel. The mosques here are serene. Low, coral stone structures with mihrabs carved in geometric beauty. You meet a muezzin, whose sandals are fastened with gold pins. "A gift," he says, "for calling the wind at the right time." You don't ask what that means. The wind shifts immediately after he says it. Historians still argue whether the Swahili city-states controlled the gold trade directly or simply served as middlemen. Some say they took a cut of every ounce. Others believe they negotiated inland routes so skillfully that whole caravans became permanent partners. There's even debate over who truly ruled the cities, local African elites or rising Arab dynasties. The answer, like the tide, depends on when you're asking. A fringe tidbit from a sailor polishing a sextant. He tells you that a golden astrolabe once washed ashore after a storm, and the sultan who found it could suddenly predict wind shifts 2 days in advance. You raise an eyebrow. Coincidence? He winks. Coincidence is just magic we haven't named yet. You wander into a library housed in what was once a merchant's estate. Scrolls wrapped in gold-threaded linen fill wooden niches. One contains poetry written by a princess of Kilwa, lamenting a shipment of gold lost to monsoon waves. The poem ends, "Even saltwater blushes to touch what shines without asking permission." As you sip cardamom tea in a shaded courtyard, a merchant explains the unwritten rule of gold here. It must always travel. If the gold stays too long, it goes sour, he says, unwrapping a belt stitched with old coins shaped like starfish. It gets restless, like us. You explore a ruined palace that overlooks the sea. The walls are scalloped with time, but inside you spot fragments of golden mosaics glinting through cracks in the plaster. Were they purely decorative? A map? A message? No one knows, though one local scholar swears it's a constellation chart. But only upside down, he insists. Dinner tonight is a blend of African staples and Asian flair. Spiced fish wrapped in banana leaf, rice soaked in coconut milk, followed by slices of golden mango so sweet you feel morally unprepared. Your host serves it on a plate said to be part of a dowry gift between 2 rival ports. The gold trim is so thin it hums when you tap it. You tap twice. That night, you sleep in a wooden guest house overlooking the ocean. The tide rolls in and out, as it always has, carrying whispers of trade, of stories, of gold packed into barrels, swallowed by storms, or exchanged for perfume and promises. The moon turns the water silver. But you know better. That's just gold trying to sneak home. You awake with the call of birds and the scent of earth, moist, loamy, fragrant, with centuries of growth and forgotten kingdoms. You've made your way into the deep forests of West Central Africa, where winding rivers thread through thick green canopies and ancient trade trails still pulse beneath the mossy floor. You've arrived in the realm of the Lunda and Luba empires. You don't find palaces here, not in the stone and marble sense. Instead, the grandeur is diffused into the land. Ceremonial earthworks, sacred groves, drums that carry messages across valleys, and kings who wear gold not on their bodies, but in their language, their posture, their music. This is not a place that flaunts wealth. This is a place that sings it. A mainstream historical fact, the Lunda and Luba empires, rising between the 17th and 19th centuries, built vast confederacies in what is now the Democratic Republic of Congo and Angola. Their power rested on control of trade networks that moved ivory, copper, and yes, significant quantities of gold north to the Saharan trade routes and east to the Swahili coast. Gold from this region found its way into royal ornaments, diplomatic gifts, and elite burial rites. You're shown a ceremonial staff, once held by a Mwanta Yav, or Lunda emperor. It's topped with a gold figure of a kneeling man, his hands cupped. He asks, and he offers, your guide explains, because gold is a question and an answer. Nearby, a woman weaves raffia cloth that shimmers faintly, not gold thread, but dusted with powdered gold leaf, applied with a small feather brush. Not for sale, she says, for stories. Historians still argue whether the Luba and Lunda gained their dominance through military force or alliance building. Oral traditions suggest complex systems of marriage diplomacy and spiritual legitimacy. Kings married into rival clans to bind them together. Some scholars claim the gold gifted during these ceremonies carried curses if rejected. Others insist it carried songs. You pass through a village where boys play mukanda, a rite of passage involving masks, riddles, and days in the forest. One wears a gold-painted gourd on his head. "Spirits recognize me," he grins. You nod solemnly. It's working. A fringe tidbit whispered by a woodcarver. Deep in the forest lies a hidden chamber carved into the roots of an ironwood tree, where a Luba queen once buried her weight in gold to avoid colonial seizure. The path is marked only by bird song. He pauses. Of course, the birds forgot the tune. You sit beneath a palm-thatched roof with an elder who draws trade routes in the dust with a stick. "Gold went north, gold went east," he says. "But the real treasure, it stayed here." You ask what that treasure was. He points to the forest. Names, stories, silence. Dinner is roasted yams, river fish smoked in banana leaves, and a gold-colored sauce made from ground seeds and something tangy you can't identify. The plate is wooden, the spoons carved with coiled snakes. "Luba royal symbol," your host explains, because gold, like snakes, doesn't shout before it strikes. That night, Unganga, a spiritual healer, invites you to sit by the fire. He shakes a gourd rattle that twinkles faintly with gold dust trapped in the resin. He says it contains voices of those who traded gold for peace. "Not a bad deal," he chuckles. Then he begins to chant. Not loud, not dramatic, but slow, curling phrases that sound like someone teaching a mountain to yawn. You lie in your hut later, wrapped in silence so thick it hums. The stars peek between the tree branches. Somewhere beyond the trees, a river moves, carrying memory in its current. You feel it in your chest, a quiet pressure, like the weight of unseen treasure just underfoot. You drift, not off, but inward, into the stories, the whispers, the traces of kingdoms that shimmer not with monuments, but with moments. The gold of Lunda, the gold of Luba. It never needed to be loud. It just needed to last. And it has. So now, dear traveler, the fires are low, and the golden stories of Africa's forgotten kingdoms begin to quiet themselves. Let the voices fade. Kings and queens, traders and poets, wanderers with gold dust in their palms. Their footsteps are soft now. Their laughter echoes gently in the corridors of your mind. You've drifted across deserts where the dunes whispered secrets. You've wandered stone cities where walls held memories tighter than vaults. You floated on warm currents between coral palaces and forest sanctuaries, where gold passed hand to hand not in greed, but in ceremony, in trust, in music. Let that weight settle, light but rich. The kind of weight that feels like the edge of a memory you didn't know you had, like the heat of a golden coin pressed into your palm in a dream. Outside your window, perhaps the world still hums with traffic and tasks. But here, inside this gentle place, only the slow rustle of history remains. A lullaby of camels and conical towers, of honey wine and whispered bargains. The kingdoms sleep now, their treasures safe for one more night. You don't have to remember it all. Just breathe in the soft glow of 1,000 suns rising over forgotten thrones. And when you wake, maybe a little of their calm will stay with you. Good night and sweet dreams.